So, without fail, every single year, the Game Awards, the nominees are revealed for Keeley's big birthday bash in December. And every single year, people are angry about something and upset about this category. This game got snubbed. This category shouldn't even exist. And I hear a lot of complaining, but I don't see a lot of fixing. How should we fix thy Game Awards? And quite honestly, I have no idea at all. I honestly think the Game Awards are fine. I really don't have many complaints with it. Of course, it could be a whole lot better, but it sure as shit could be a whole lot worse. I know the youngsters might not remember this, but there was once a Game Awards on Spike TV, and it was also called the Video Game Awards, and it was horrendous. Every single year was kind of god awful, and even then, like that's the funny thing. Even that I have a lot of nostalgic memories for. I have a lot of positive feelings for, like my childhood years watching those shows. So I guess I personally just don't really care about award shows all that much. I like hearing more personalized awards of this podcast gives out their awards, or a specific creator gives out their awards, and you can kind of relate to the individual person or the smaller group, opposed to this wide, almost algorithmic popularity contest of sorts. And I don't know, but regardless, it's a big show and it's worth critiquing because it gets hundreds of millions of eyeballs on it. So that's what we're going to do here today. Let's go through and make some changes to the old Game Awards. And also, quick shout out, this was voted on by the Patreon supporters and the YouTube members. Thank y'all so very much for supporting the channel. Okay, so how about we run through this and we'll set it up. Let's try to get like 5 or so key fixes on the board. And for me, I think the most important one is like, we got to figure out, I don't know, we got to figure out what is eligible to be nominated. Because when I go to like Best RPG, so I got the site pulled up here. Let's find Best RPG. That was one of the more egregious ones. And it's always one of the more egregious ones, in my opinion. But you see Best RPG, and you see Monster Hunter Wilds. And I'm like, okay, so we got to find like clear definitions for what an RPG is. Because to me, it's like, why not just throw Monster Hunter Wilds in the best action category? And then, but it gets so confusing because everybody's going to have their own, personal opinion for, well, I think this technically could qualify for an RPG. So I think you should whittle shit down and maybe have a list for every category, for whichever award you're wanting to give out. Like for literally every single one of these categories, I think you should have like a jury or a nominating body who selects the 20 games or maybe even just 15 games. You whittle it down to a list of 15 games, or maybe you have so how the process works now is that it will be like there's these different, companies, outlets, individuals who vote on the awards. Okay, here they are. Got them pulled up on the screen for you. So we got these different, rather it be podcasts or just traditional media outlets who vote on the different awards and what should and should not be nominated. And I think that's great. I think that, keep doing it that way. But my suggestion would be, whenever all the votes have been cast for that initial, nomination, when you're submitting your nominees, then have like a, I don't know, elite panel of journalists, creators, pundits who have been in the space for decades, and they can kind of go through and be like, okay, well, I don't think this necessarily qualifies here, or, just being able to have a bit of a deeper dive into what should and should not be eligible. Because I think whenever you see even something like, Sonic, when you get to best adaptation here and there's no Sonic 3. And it's like, that's just clearly an oversight because the voters forgot that it came out in the period that it was eligible. And so it came out in December, but that's been a year ago, and it's left everybody's mind because that was a year ago. And there was not like, whenever you were submitting your vote, there were no like recap reminder of here, maybe the 30, 40, 50 different things that you should think about for these categories. But I don't know, even then you could kind of get into a place of having a few people be more influential than they should be. It's once again, I think when you start breaking all of this down and trying to figure out how to fix the show, you start realizing that it's going to be damn difficult to fix anything by really any suggestion, feedback that you want to implement. You can immediately think of the negative or the adverse sort of ramification if the thing that you want implemented was implemented. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there's necessarily a surefire absolute solution to fix all of this other than just, admitting that it's a silly show and we're tuning in to watch announcements and we stop taking the shit seriously. But at the same time, it is the biggest award show in the industry. So it's worth taking seriously to some degree, I guess. So yeah, we'll just throw down for our first one. Let's put overseers. Draft like 10 overseers. Get Jeff Gerstmann in there. Get, Daniel Bloodworth in there. Throw a lot of the sites that you already have on there. Kind of go through them and pick like an individual overseer who can figure out what should and should not be eligible and maybe move things around where they fit better and just have a overall more, it just feels like it's lacking some sort of curation right now. So go and grab Blessing Adeoye Jr. from Kind of Funny and just pick your different Bradley Ellis, go grab him from Last Stand and get some Gene Park, people who have been in the industry for a long ass time and play a shit ton of games, have a shit ton of knowledge of the industry and kind of rely on them to keep things in line to some degree. But once again, you're immediately by doing that, you are opening up a Pandora's box of possibility for corruption and shit like that by limiting the who are overseeing this thing opposed to just letting it be this broad open kind of how they're implementing it currently. But I don't know, I think there could be ways of doing it where, say, you have people who have never or who are not being sponsored by publishers, who are not doing sponsored streams, who are not getting paid directly by video game publishers to advertise their game. And if anybody has been in that position in the last like 4 or 5 years, they can't be in the overseer program or whatever the fuck. So, making sure that you're not like having streamers and stuff like that who are obviously incredibly biased just due to their working relationships with these different publishers. So some sort of overseer program to keep things in order would be my first implementation. And I'm also acknowledging that would probably fuck shit up quite a bit as well, potentially down the line. But I think to piggyback right off that, in that conversation of talking about, okay, pick the 15, 20 games that qualify for these categories. These are the games that you can vote on, or these are the games that we're whittling it down between. And I think that a bigger conversation pops up there about just categories in general for the Game Awards, where let's say you run into a scenario where you can't whittle it down to a 15 or 20, or there's not 15 or 20 games represented for that category that you're voting for. It's at that point, I think, pretty obvious that category should be cut. So a lot of categories need to be cut from and we'll go through and break it down bit by bit. But I feel if your category doesn't have 15 to 20 nominees available on any given year, then it's like, why are we awarding anything to it in general? Why can't we just combine that category into another one and just cut this shit down quite a bit? I just think there's too many categories in general. And also there's categories that should be in there that aren't. So we'll get into all of that. But yeah, I just think that if you don't have 15 to 20 games eligible on any given year for a category, then the category shouldn't exist. So let's kind of go through this and see which of these categories we should just outright cut. Obviously everything in those like top few rows there. Games for impact probably could get cut for a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message. It's like, I don't even know what the hell that means, man. I mean, I cannot tell you what the pro-social meaning for Lost Records Bloomin' Rage is. I mean, I guess that there's themes of like bullying and shit in there. So I don't know. I sure, you can keep that one around. I just wish there was a better description for what the hell that even means. But like when you get into best VR/AR game, who has played this shit? You know what I mean? I not to be rude, but could these not be combined into like, if this one's an RPG, then it should be nominated for best RPG. If this one's an action game, it should be nominated for best action game. And if it can't stack up against those games, then why have its own category in general? Best fighting as well, where it's like, sure, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves and Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, which is kind of broken and the online's all fucked up, and Capcom Fighting Collection 2, a remaster, Virtua Fighter 5, a remaster. It's, yeah, I once again, if you don't have a best shooter category available, right? Like there's no best shooter category, but you have a best fighting category. There's no best horror category, but there's a best fighting category. I think that's crazy. There's dozens of good shooters that come out every year. There's dozens of good horror games that come out every year. We're struggling to fill, like, if we're being honest, you could have Mortal Kombat, the Legacy Collection in here. You could get like 3 that feel somewhat reasonable in here. And yeah, if you're struggling to come up with 5 selections, then the entire category should be cut, in my opinion. Or, once again, have like a rotating list where, to that point of, if you had the overseers there, they could be like, man, this is a really good year for fighting games. Let's bring best fighting game back into the fold, to where, there's 10 good fighting games that released this year. So now it makes sense to select the best 5, opposed to, there's only 4 fighting games that released in general this year, so now we're going to throw in Sifu. It's like, what the fuck are we doing, man? So yeah, cut best fighting. Once again, maybe you could return to it for certain years, but by and large, I think cutting best fighting makes a lot of sense. Another one that I don't really understand at all is you have best community support, but then you also have best ongoing game. And it's like, well, isn't that the key part of a game ongoing? If a game is continuing to go on, I'm assuming it has very good community support. So it's like, should you change it? Like, should this be best community manager? And you're voting for a specific individual in the community who is doing their best to individually manage the community. And is that something different from best ongoing? I don't know. Pick one of those 2 and cut it. I don't really care which one you pick. Let's just say we're cutting best ongoing. So cut ongoing. And I think there was one more. Oh yeah, cut VR. If you're a good enough VR game, if you're a good enough game in general to be nominated in the genre that you, because I mean, I think we're seeing, even though I will shout out, Meta is very, very much still invested in VR, but it seems like literally everybody else is getting out of the space. Although Valve just announced a VR headset, but even there, it's not like really, even how they're marketing that thing doesn't feel like it's positioning itself to really take advantage of like VR video games, like games developed for VR. I think here with the esports, the all of this content creator of the year, esports game, esports athlete, esports team, I think you for sure. I mean, content creator of the year is crazy to me because that is you would think that you'd see like no clip and all of the more kind of documentarian work that's being done in the games industry, and just there's a lot of great shit going on, and this totally just turns into a popularity contest of like streamers, and I don't really, I just don't understand the for a streamer or content creator who has made an important and positive impact on the community in 2025. Yeah, sure. But I think you could cut that because it doesn't make sense. You're not really highlighting a lot of the excellent work that's being done, like in the, once again, and all of that is subjective. Like, who the fuck, I can't say what is excellent. Like, sometimes I'll see Kai Cenat stream or clips from the stream pop up on my Twitter, and I'm like, damn, that there's a lot of production and really interesting shit going on there. So, and that one dude has probably done more for the Souls community and the even like Arkham and a lot of the games he's playing than, entire damn marketing campaigns. So sure, keep it, whatever. But all of this esports shit, just esports game. You select esports game as the thing, or esports team, pick one, whichever one makes the most sense to keep around. I think probably best esports game. You keep that and you cut the rest of the esports shit. It makes no sense to have 3 esports categories. So let's just say cut all esports except best esport. This is already too many fucking words. Best esports game. Does that pop up on your screen? No, it's cut off there a little bit, but you get the point. Well, you know what? Cut all esports except... Okay, there we go. Cut all esports except esports game. So now we have our 5 cuts or our 4 cuts, which ends up being a lot more than 5 cuts because we're cutting like 4 different fucking esports categories. And so those are just the cuts. There's a lot of shit that we need to, the categories that I do think should stay, but definitely need to be fixed. And the first one that I think of, and I've talked about this forever, is best independent game. And I think that there's a very simple, once again, none of this is simple, but in my mind, the fix, the solution of making sure you don't have games like Clair Obscur Expedition 33 in the mix, a game that probably has a larger budget than all of these other games combined, is you limit this by budget. And you have it to where if your game if it exceeded a $5 million budget, then your game is no longer eligible for best independent game. And of course, the problem there becomes, how do you figure out what the budgets were? And I guess that could once again be a thing for the overseers. And if there is something nominated in the mix that catches their eye and they're like, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I got a little bit of a red flag on this one. I think that budget probably exceeded $5 million. You send out an email, do the full thing. If you get confirmation back that the game was under $5 million, then sure, it can be eligible. So let's just type in 5 milli indie will be our description there. 5 milli indie. If you're over 5 milli for your indie game, it's not an indie game. You know what? And I just thought about another cut for best debut indie game. This entire category should be cut, in my opinion, and replace it with like solo dev. Best, how would you word that? yeah, I guess we'll just say cut debut, include or add best solo dev, and just award it to like with Local Thunk. I don't know if that was completely. I think it was a solo development project for Balatro, but though you're starting to see the influx of the basement dev or the the solo development projects where one person fucking worked a full-time job and then created something completely independently, like actually independent, zero funding, zero resources, zero help from anyone other than themselves, and they were getting this thing across the finish line by themselves. There's a lot of those games releasing every single year that get no spotlight at all. And then you see with like best debut indie game, it in my opinion, once again, if it's best independent game period, then qualify for best independent game period. And when you're talking about best debut indie game, you're seeing I absolutely adore what Ad Hoc did with Dispatch, but that's a lot of very, very experienced talent, and they just created a new studio, and it's still a hell of an accomplishment. Incredible accomplishment for their first game under this new umbrella, but that's a team with decades of experience in the industry and also some decent funding. Actually, you know what? I think you could keep best debut blank. You know what I mean? Where you don't cut the word indie from best debut, but just best debut game from a debut studio. And that can be of any magnitude, AAA, AA, whatever. And then you add best solo dev, and then just cut the word indie from debut. So I changed it to cut best debut indie here at number 6, and now we're gonna add best solo dev. For whatever reason the cap lock dropped there. Add best solo dev, and then we shall add just overall best debut game, and that can come from any AAA, AA, it doesn't matter, budget size doesn't matter, just new studio. So like that would be perfect for a Sandfall and Ad Hoc, but also would be perfect for the Arkham guys with Sefton Hill, 100 Star Games, whenever they debut their new thing, or whenever Dan Houser debuts his new game with, I'm forgetting the name of the studio he just started up, but yeah, no real separation between budget size, just new studio. And then that way you don't have issues where the developer for Megabonk is like, well, I've been creating games for forever, but just under different names and different pseudonyms. And like, okay, no, if this is your new studio under a new name, very simple blanket terms, if you fit there, cool, you apply. If not, then no harm, no foul. So those two additions there for solo dev best debut game, I guess that can kind of kick off, because we're making a lot of cuts, and I really don't think you need to add many categories because the award show is already 4 hours long, and once again everybody is just there to see new announcements. So adding more awards to a show where they get read off to the side with someone just kind of looking at a list and then highlighting the thing that wins, like I don't really know how much of why add new awards when they're kind of thrown by the wayside. But I do think one of the key things that is missing from this show, or just an award I would like to see represented, is the non-critical darlings. Like getting all of these sites together and being like, what is your favorite bad game, or what is the most underrated game of 2025, 2026, whatever, where maybe the qualifications are, you look at something like a Metacritic, and if it's 65 or under on Metacritic, then it qualifies. So anything that is rated lower than a 65 on Metacritic is eligible to be nominated for most underrated games. So let's say add most underrated to the list. I think that's always one of my favorite categories whenever we do the Unnecessary Game Awards show. Is like, what is the most slept on game of the year? What is the game that critics don't like that you're completely baffled by why they don't like it? Another addition I would make here, and this would just simplify shit a lot, is add a best remake slash remaster category. Because I just don't think that remakes or remasters should really be eligible for Game of the Year or most other awards. Like, I think you put I mean, there's more than enough remakes and remasters releasing every single year to fill up a list of 5 really good ones. You put those in that category, and then you keep them away from Game of the Year. You keep them away from Best Game Direction or whatever the case may be. You keep it in a specific bundle. And even, you know what? Throw DLC in there. Yeah, fuck it. Throw DLC in there as well. None of that should be eligible elsewhere. Have its own specific category for that. You know, you maybe could do a best DLC. Here we go, adding more unnecessary awards to this shit. Best DLC slash add-on or expansion. We'll throw expansion. That feels more substantial. So that way you keep remakes, remasters, DLC, expansions, all of that. You keep it out of being eligible for any other award. It has its own specific lane that it fills. So yeah, man, I think those are kind of the main cuts, additions, limitations, all of the changes I would make to the Game Awards. I think that's going to be the list right there. The 12 changes I would make to fix the Game Awards. I honestly, man, at the end of the day, I think if you put these changes to effect, I'm sure some of them might make sense, but by and large, I don't think anything I'm really suggesting right here would change or make the Game Awards much better. I guess it would change the Game Awards, certainly, but even then, would it really? Like, the shit that we're talking about here is so irrelevant in the grand scheme of things for that show. None of this at all in any way, shape, or form does anybody give a fuck about other than us. The people who talk about this and are discussing, you know, what should be nominated, what shouldn't be nominated, we're so far in the minority where, you know, hundreds of millions of people tune in. Well, it's not really hundreds of millions of people. It's hundreds of millions of views, which can be multiple views from the same person and can be clips that are shared around and can be, you know, the streamers with their different... I get it. It's not actually 100 million individual unique eyeballs viewing the show, but let's just say 20, 30 million people tune into the show each year. It's probably about 40 to 50,000 of us who really give a shit about the awards at all. And everyone else is there to see Half-Life 3. And everyone else is there to see... You see that new thing that Keely's hyping up? It's like this monument statue thing that Keely was tweeting out. And people are like, oh my God, is it God of War? Is it Half-Life 3? What could it possibly be? And then you look into it and it's like, oh, no, right. Yeah, it's probably something to do with Diablo, an expansion for Diablo 4. Get hyped, everybody. Expansions for Diablo 4. That's what we're getting hyped about. When I realized, or whenever information came out that it was probably a Diablo DLC, I was like, oh boy, if that's what we're hyping up leading into the Game Awards, I am setting my expectations a lot lower. If that's where we're, probably best to set that expectation on the floor. And if it's anything that slightly leaps above that, then we'll get excited. But yeah, man, those are the fixes, the changes that I would make to the old Game Awards. I don't think making any of these changes once again would improve much of anything, but just some thoughts, some suggestions to throw out there. Complaining without adding any solution is just I don't care. I complain all the time without adding a solution. Who gives a fuck? But appreciate y'all for tuning in, and stream will be happening for the Game Awards on December 11th, so tune in to our live stream reaction to the show, and I'm just, once again, pumped to see what gets announced, keeping my expectations very, very low, though. So, yeah, man, appreciate y'all, and I shall see you good people very, very soon. Take it easy, guys, and goodbye.